Hey guys, Timcast music producer Carter Banks here, wanting to wish you a Merry Christmas. We just signed our first artist to Trash House Records, and we have our first debut single coming out December 12th. Pre-save it on your favorite stream platform at trashhousechristmas.com. Support our work.
Bijan Robinson has said a no-no word. I believe he was doing an interview, and he said, smear the queer. And then, of course, the Longhouse made him apologize.
Right.
Bijan Robinson tweeted, "Hey, everyone, I want to apologize for the insensitive comment I made in the broadcast. Okay. It was a football game we used to play as a kid, but that's not an excuse. I recognize the mistake and make sure to do better in the future. It was not reflective of my beliefs, and I am so sorry to those I offended seriously." Now, you think the left, and specifically the LGBT crew, they really do embrace the phrase queer. Right? Like, it is a political identity. It's more than just about your sexual orientation.
It's the Q.
Yeah, it's the Q in LGBT.
Every time they say it, it's the Q. It's right there.
Yeah. So how is it that this is wrong for one side and right for another? And I know the answer, but I'm interested in hearing your thoughts.
I don't know. I just think that like whoever got mad at that is making a very betraying confession that they themselves were, the queer.
They were the smeared.
Batman could not beat that confession out of me.
Real.
I would never have like a problem with that and indicate that I was the one being smeared in this circumstance. So yeah, it's so much. I really am of the opinion, and this is not my idea. I read this on Twitter and I'll regurgitate it because that's where all the best content is. But someone said something like, whether or not you had fun in high school is like the greatest predictor, not perfect, but the greatest predictor of how adjusted you're going to be in the real world. And that's like when I see stuff like this where people are like, you can't use that word or talk about this. Like, again, it makes you wonder, what was their experience like? Were they the one being smeared? Were they sort of in that situation? So I don't know.
It's all
the queer
kids.
And the way that we played Smear the Queer is the queer was actually like usually the top dog because you would have to win the ball over.
Yeah,
exactly. And then the longer you would hold the ball, that meant the better player you were. So you actually wanted to be a queer for the longest time.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm one of the best. Hey, San Antonio, Texas, I was one of the best queers in town.
The goal of the game
Texas,
was
that's
to be the queer.
And in San Antonio, that's,
Because there's some big old women down there, too.
There's some-
They get involved,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
over. They did, yeah.
Yeah, that river, you still go down the Riverwalk and you hear the name Tate Brown is just said over and over.
Oh,
It's
my
on
gosh.
everyone's lips.
That's that queer. Oh, he's awesome.
Oh, yeah, Tate.
He's one of the best queers.
guy.
Tate Brown, the queer, yeah.
We tried to smear him for years.
Could it be done?
Yeah.
Could it be done?
I do want to point out that there was a time where people like to say that woke is dead, right? They like to say woke is dead, it's done. And I think that this is actually a great example of the fact that it's never done, right? The fight against the left doesn't end. It's great to have victories. You celebrate your victories. You want to acknowledge them. And when the right has power, you want to see them executing it. But that doesn't mean that the left just is going to turn tail and say, "Oh, I guess we were wrong, guys," and just crawl into a hole somewhere. They're going to regroup. They're going to push back, and you need to make sure that you're holding your politicians accountable, and you want to make sure that you're holding organizations like the NFL and like Netflix, like whoever. You want to make sure that you're holding them accountable and saying, "Look, these are our values. Stop crapping on our values and stop making it seem like we're wrong for having these values."
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's certainly less insane than it was at the peak in 2020, but I think about it like, you're conquering a city, and in the process of conquering, you're seeing some pretty ugly stuff, and it's like pretty intense. But once it's settled down and they're just kind of peacefully governing the city, they're still in power, and there's still consequences for stepping out of line, but you're not seeing guys get executed or something in public. So it's certainly not as bad as it used to be, but it's still... That's a good
But I mean, I think that that's a great point. Like, we've talked about how the left has been kind of pushed back, but it's not their death throes, but as they lose ground, they become more aggressive. And I think
feral.
And I think Charlie was a great example of that.
I always thought that, and I actually said that on the show a lot, but actually Orrin McIntyre, bring him up again. He had a show yesterday. I forget her name. She does studies of political violence. Amy Paladin.
Great show. I tweeted about it.
I listened to that too. It was fantastic.
And she actually made the case as like, no, it's just ramping up, whether there's a leftist in power, whether or not. It's actually people with an in-group preference. When their person's in charge, they take it easy. They're like, okay, we're good. He's adhering to our what we want. But people with an out-group preference, they believe they're in constant rebellion no matter what. It doesn't matter if their guy's in charge or not. They're always perpetually in rebellion.
You should
definitely. So leftist violence is just no matter who's in charge, it's going to continue to get worse and worse until the state comes down.
They're not going to stop. You always have to keep fighting. fighting back. And if you give them an inch, they'll take a mile back, just like we see here. So it doesn't matter how much we keep pushing back. We can't settle down. You have to keep on fighting, just like they do.
I want to point out that it's Arn McIntyre's podcast he does with The Blaze, and the guest was Aiden Paladin, and the overall show was about who's more violent, whether it be the left or the right. And the overall synopsis is the left is actually more frequently violent. They're less successful, and that could be because they're less competent. But you should watch the show and make the decision yourself.
Before we move subjects on this, on the smear the queer story, that I've gone back, and everyone knows my wife wasn't born in this country. But so that also just means there's a lot of media that like she doesn't know about because she wasn't here in the 90s. She wasn't here. Like she didn't know who Will Ferrell was until like recently.
Lucky.
She just didn't know. She just had no idea.
Got to show her Step Brothers.
No, we've gone through like
didn't
the
get it.
entire canon. We've gone through the canon. It was great. She loved it. And so I'll go back and just find like older shows to say, oh my gosh, you've never seen this. Let's sit down and watch it. We did like all of Seinfeld, Simpsons. She had never seen Simpsons. And the one we're on right now is Reno 911. Right? And so I actually hadn't realized how long ago Reno started. Reno 911 is older than Tate.
A lot of things are older than Tate, but that does surprise me.
Yeah, exactly. No, it started 2003. That's right.
I'm a new gen, man.
2003. And those guys had shows that were even older. A lot of the same like comedy troupe, those same actors. And so the episodes that they made, and people remember this, that was not a controversial show.
Yeah.
That was not a show that there was ever this buzz around like, oh, we should cancel Reno 911. And they're like dropping N-bombs. They talk about like literally everything under the sun. There's swastika jokes. There's jokes about Israel, Jewish people, like all obviously homosexual jokes and transvestite jokes, like all over. They actually, in one episode, they have they get 2 tickets to an execution, and so everybody wants them. So in order to win the tickets for the execution, they set up a scavenger hunt. Let's go. But there's a point system, and you have to arrest. Like they're like okay. And I'm just gonna say this because this was a normal like 10 p.m. comedy show in the mid 2000s or early 2000s, which was not, again, it was considered raunchy, of course, but it wasn't something that was considered like, oh, we need to pull that off the air ever.
Well, raunchy was allowed.
TV. Yeah. Raunchy was allowed. And I'm watching it. I'm like, there's my culture. And there it is. I wasn't making it up. It was real. It was all real. And you were that. And you were too. And so in the scavenger hunt, it was like, okay, you have to get someone and they have to have an animal tattoo is like 5 points. And then, and if they have a racial tattoo, that's like 10 points. And if it's a transvestite, that's 20 points. And they go, best looking hooker in town. And that's 20 points. And then at the bottom, they have the Star of David. And they're like, what's that for? And it's, it's dangling. It's like, oh, and it's double points if they're Jewish.
Oso starts a vintage aesthetics account on Twitter, but it's just like slurs from Reno.
They're double points. And at the very end, it's of course Garcia. And he's got this, this one suspect. And they're like, okay, I think that's, oh wait, no, he's still under. He's on it. Wait, pulled up. And they've got a necklace of the Star of David. And they're like, no, double points. And they're like, screw you, Garcia. That tattoo is fresh. That is fresh ink. You just got that. That's a ringer. And then he ends up taking the hooker to the execution.
Cheating. Oh, there you go. Cheating.
But I mean, like, it's hilarious. It's like stupid, funny, like, you know what I mean? Like it's just poking fun at all the little differences between everybody. And some people call it casual racism or whatever. But the idea that like an old Chris Rock bit, that this used to be the way that we sort of like lived in society together. We have differences and we just laughed about it.
Yeah.
Casual racism implies the existence of ranked competitive racism.
Everyone gets dished on.
Well, Carl Benjamin, Sargon of Akkad, he's made this point multiple times. It's just bants, right? It's just banter, and it's how
it's banter. Yeah,
it's
exactly.
how you can relate to someone that's actually different from you.
Yep.
You make jokes. Everybody gets their turn. Everyone gets a little.
And I'm Polish, so like I grew up with it.
But this is something that society used to embrace, and in our society, because the United States has so many different people from so many different backgrounds. Even if you're only talking exclusively about white people, right? It used to be the Italians and the Irish would give crap to the English and blah blah blah, and it was totally fine. It was again how you relate to each other, and it was how you made sure that you could get along in a society where there were very different backgrounds.
Yeah.
And nowadays, the left has made that so toxic that you see people actually alienating more, and you see people looking at each other's differences as something bad and something that you don't want to involve yourself in, as opposed to saying, okay, we're a little bit different, but we all kind of want the same things, and we're all very similar in a mindset.
Well, they twist you up because it's like you can't say anything about the differences, but also you have to celebrate diversity.
Yeah.
So like, which is it? And you wonder why people go nuts.
Yeah, a great example is Vince McMahon's World Wrestling Federation. And it's, like, think about like peak like American unity in 2002, 2001, where like Eddie Guerrero, like everybody loved that guy.
Yeah.
John Cena put out a rap album. Like everybody was just like everything was on the table, everything was fine. And now you look at WWE and I'm not following it, but I understand that its audience has stopped being like just normal Americans, and now there's a huge like liberal presence in the fans.
Yep.
They really have no tolerance for like the old Vince McMahon style of running. I mean, he's not even at the company anymore.
So they're called the IWC, the Internet or was it Internet Wrestling Fans or something like that? Yeah.
But like Vince McMahon, if he was going to say like, okay, I want to incorporate a foreign market, not because I care about foreigners necessarily, but because I'm a ruthless like capitalist, we're going to bring in a guy from Japan. Oh, is he going to be just like what? No, he's going to be like Yokozuna. He's going to be a big fat sumo wrestler. We're going to bring in a guy from, Iran.
Yokozuna wasn't Japanese.
Oh, he wasn't?
No.
Okay, so even better. Like, yeah, we're just gonna like
Get a Chinese guy.
We're gonna have Hulk Hogan, rest in peace, come out, and he's gonna be the big American. He's gonna go up against like this Iranian guy, and it's gonna be this huge like clash of worlds. Or an Irish guy, he's gonna come out and literally just be like the.
Yep.
So it was like acknowledging these stereotypes, not because it's like, hey, we don't. I mean, there probably was a little bit of nativism there. There probably was a little bit of nativism there, like in the American audience. It's like, we hate you, but it was like part of it, and you could acknowledge those differences, and ultimately it was fun, it was entertaining, and it was a good like pressure release valve from what otherwise is gonna be some serious headbutting when you're not allowed to do
when The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, like when he first came out, wasn't he part of like, what do they call that thing? It was like a Nation of Islam kind of thing.
Yeah, probably.
No, seriously, when he was Rocky Maivia, and I can't remember off the top of my head, all the internet fans are gonna be mad at me, but yeah, he was like one of the enforcers in this group, and he came out. At Human Events, our executive producer Angelo Fazio, and he's kind of said this publicly. We've mentioned a few times. He was one of Vince McMahon's top writers for like 10 years. So I mean, he was very, very up in that. Used to be the head writer Raw. Did like 3 WrestleManias. Just worked with Vince very closely. And I remember asking him, I was like, "What do you think about the Netflix documentary?" He's like, "I'm not watching that." It was awesome. But I mean, he's I've heard a lot of the tea. I'll just put it that way. I've heard a lot of the tea.
To your point about the way that we relate to each other, you could watch the WWE or WWF, and one of the interesting things is even when like Sergeant Slaughter turned heel, right? Like the guy that was supposed to be perfect American kind of like Americana military guy, and he still turned heel. So it was a situation where anybody could do anything at any time, whether it was it didn't matter what their background.
I'm still
was.
upset about Sergeant Slaughter betraying his country.
Name
How could
dropping.
you
Sorry,
do
I didn't know
that?
we were with ball knowers here. I didn't know that we.
I mean, look, man,
do that.
Dude, that's
I'm
what
an
I
old
love
guy. I'm
so
an old
much
guy.
About like the heel turn is because there's only so many ways you can do it. Like there's maybe like 2 ways, and you ultimately you want the audience to hate you. So either you betray like a baby face and you out of nowhere, or you come out and you let your ego and you're like, I did this all by my. There's like 2 ways you can do it. And so now I'm seeing AI videos
audience.
where you'll have Martin Luther King come out and he's the WWE champion and he's got a mic and he'll be like, you know what? I don't have any more dreams. And everyone's like, what? He's like, I am the dream now. And they're like, he's turning heel. And the audience is like, and Michael Cole's like, he's turning heel, like he's a bad guy or something like that. It's just so good.
It is. But I do think that it speaks to, the way that we used to be able to relate to each other, and the fact that that's kind of gone away because of all the woke schools.
Nation of Domination. I just looked it up. It was called the Nation of Domination, and they were like a Nation of Islam, kind of. Look it up. Find a picture. Nation of Domination.
There's also a whole like slew of those WWE where it's like there's one where Rosa Parks comes out jingling keys. It's insane, bro.
When I saw Stephen Hawking from the top rope on his wheelchair,
Stephen
I was like, all right, I can't.
Dude, there was one which I almost feel bad even reiterating, but I laughed at it where a certain basketball player who is unfortunately no longer with us was in the ring and he was talking about like, who gonna stop me? Who gonna stop me? And then a helicopter descending. But dude, the blades weren't even spinning. It was just like gliding down the ramp and everything. And oh my God, here it comes.
All right.
There's something
so back.
There's something to that though. It's sort of that like it's like a low culture kind of, it plays on human nature, it plays on human stories, it plays on the hero's journey in many cases, and it plays on these meta-narratives that we tell each other that we can sort of see throughout society and throughout the world. And when you play with that, and that gets you into the idea of kayfabery, right? Or kayfabe. And as a writer for wrestling, they'll say like you have to keep it within the spectrum of the real, like in the sense of, will this betrayal make sense? Will that make sense? If this person wins, would that make sense? And when it doesn't, because the audience gets a vote on this stuff, is what I'm trying to say. So like, even if, we know, okay, like it's written, like, yes, so is like Marvel and Star Wars, people like that too. But like, if you don't like it, if it doesn't get over with the crowd. And this is like the Montreal Screwjob is a great example of this with Bret Hart and stuff where people will just be like, that's so obviously fake that the audience just starts, and then so there are stories of like Vince McMahon going in and like editing out the boos and different master reels and stuff, and sweetening the cheers, and or like something doesn't get a cheer so he just adds it in later.
Let's go. I wish we could do that for IRL. Add in a laugh and post.
Just get rid of Tate. That'd be awesome.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.